Welcome back to season 2 of Drive Performance. My name is Tom Shea, your host, the co-founder of Agile Media Group. Today, joined by my good friend Eli Weiss, Senior Director of CX and Retention at Jones Road, a beauty brand founded by Bobby Brown. In addition to being a leader in the CX space, Eli also has a notable podcast with Cody called Down to Chat, a newsletter called All Things CX and Retention. He also just released a playbook with Gorgeous. I'm getting free sponsorship here, called CX Unlocked, taking a deep dive into the heart and soul of CX, unraveling the mission and vision of genuine CX excellence. Eli, welcome to Driving Performance.
Thank you, Tom.
I appreciate it.
I'm excited. I think it's just been like, as you kind of read through all the stuff, I'm like...
Exhausted?
It's been a year or two or three, but it's exciting. It's like I jumped into beauty being like, I don't know anything about mascara. I know nothing about beauty.
Right.
And what I learned over the last couple of years is like a customer is a customer is a customer. And I'm sure that you're seeing that on the B2B side, but it's it's exciting to just see that it's...
Yeah, same like core
same.
Motivations and things like that. Yeah, sort of hilarious. This episode is at the Natural Food and Beverage Expo, and neither of us are in that category anymore.
This is true. Yeah, this is true. So the Expo East, for those that don't know, is in Philly, or it's been in Philly for the last couple of years.
Right.
And I spent time at Olipop, and it's Friday afternoon here, and I said, I how can I not see the new beverages?
Right.
Although I have zero to do with beverages.
Yeah, right.
So.
And the last Expo, any core memories as we send it off into the distance? We'll no longer have an excuse to come out here. You'll have to keep coming back to New York.
This is true. I mean, food and beverage has been so much fun. I think that, beauty is a whole different universe, but food and beverage is just like the ambiance, like the connections, the crew. It feels so small.
Yeah, it does.
It just feels like a small crew where everyone knows everyone. I think we're seeing that in D2C, like more broadly, that like everyone knows everyone.
Yeah.
But food and beverage is just so much fun. I think in general, like any like CPG, like real products,
right,
are so exciting because like sell it to somebody, they eat it, they love it, they're happy.
Tom First was the Culture Pop. Tom First was just on. He was like, the coolest part about this industry is the feedback is so instant, where it's like, you taste it, you can get the reaction on their face. Yeah. You'll get the words within 3 seconds. Whereas a lot of other categories, it's like these long cycles. Just, he's talking about his business, allow them to move fast, iterate quick, the importance of demos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But this industry is the best. But why don't I quickly introduce the format of the podcast? As we are in a glorious truck, there will be a few stops along today's route. First stop, we're going to dive into your background, upbringing, family life, and all of the experiences that led you to Jones Road. Then let's jump deep into Jones Road, talk about the CX thought leadership, as many hot takes as we can squeeze in a single episode. And then we'll conclude with a game we call the Hot Box, which is a rapid this or that style question game modeled off the hot seat. And then we'll wrap and go back to eating free samples. Sound good?
Done. Yeah.
All right, let's do it. All right, so stop one, background, origin story. You have one of the more interesting upbringings. I think I'll let you speak to it. But you've sort of lived in a lot of different places, a massive family. So tell us about early years, Eli.
Yeah, wow. I grew up number 2 of 10, and I've shared the story a couple of times in the past, but I think what's been interesting about my upbringing is not many people from the universe that I grew up in kind of make it out into the corporate world in the way that I have. I think it's been interesting, kind of didn't graduate high school traditionally, got my GED in my 20s, never went to college. And most kind of people that grow up in the universe I grow up in kind of like get a job with their uncle's company or their cousin.
For sure.
Jump in like something in the neighborhood. I started traveling with Points and Miles as an early 20-year-old. Found the pointsguide.com and I was like, wait, what? You can travel for free.
Yeah.
A couple of years later, had a few million miles and started traveling. So
we manufacture spending.
Yes,
Let's go.
Yes. This is way back when things were easier.
Were you doing like the Walmart cash order thing?
It was more so. Well, like, I don't know if I should be talking about gray areas on the podcast, but I think what was exciting back then was that in general, like the idea of churning credit cards, which is now like a little bit more foreign because Chase has a very notorious 5-24 rule, which is basically you can't get 5 new cards in 24 months. Across all companies. Back then, you were able to get like 6 cards in one day, and then 3 months later, get another 6 cards. So at my prime, I had like 40-something credit cards and a credit score of like 8-something, like 810 or 815.
How many do you have now?
Probably 20.
Wow.
And
Right.
I still travel a lot with points, but back then it was like growing up in a huge family. We didn't have a ton of money.
Totally. Yeah.
There's an ability for me to travel, so I saw like 20 something countries in my early 20s, and then
Are
kind
your
of.
parents just like shook as this playing out?
My parents were excited because I went to Israel.
Okay.
And as a Jewish boy, it was exciting
Right.
that I went to Israel to study. I lasted like 30 minutes and then started traveling, but they didn't know a ton.
Yeah.
And I was going with friends, and we had a blast. And fast forward, I went back to Israel, got excited about living in a foreign country, and lived there on and off for 4 years, and had no job, and would basically come back to the States, work for a couple of months as like a chief of staff or
Right.
like working at my uncle's kitchen company.
Right.
Would make a couple of grand, go back to Israel, live for 6 months with that money, and come back. It was a wild world.
Awesome.
I jumped into this luggage company in Israel, and I was doing everything. I was doing ops, I was doing logistics, I was doing Amazon ads and Facebook ads and
Yeah.
all that fun stuff, and kind of doing everything. And 4 years later, moved back to the States. My wife started school here, and then was like, I need a job.
Right.
And turns out applying for I want to do everything at your company wasn't a move.
Chief of staff, sort of,
Yeah,
kind of.
basically. So I jumped into CX because it was like it felt like a niche that I was excited about.
Right.
The math I did in my head is like, there are so many things I'm decently good at. What's the thing that feels the easiest? Like,
Okay.
what's the thing that I can do in the morning with like half my brain and still be better than most?
Yeah.
And that was CX for me. Like, Ops, I was like another Excel sheet. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God.
I had the same calculation. I was doing computer science. I was like, I am like lower quartile in this arena. Like, what am I top quartile in?
Right. But I like the framing of like, what's something that I can wake up and do easily? Because in
Right.
general, as an industry, we're like so obsessed with hustle. And what's like if you like pain, like what's the most painful thing to do? Like,
Right.
what's the most brutally difficult thing to do versus like, what's something I'm naturally pretty good at?
Right.
And like what people struggle with for me feels easy. So jumped into that, and then kind of the rest is history. Jumped into Nugs very early on, which was called Simulate afterwards, and then
Yep.
Olipop very early. So I was there for almost 2 years. And then again, I like pain, so I was like, let me relearn something in an entirely new industry, which brought me to Jones Road.
Got it.
But that's my long
Yeah.
story.
Why do you think CX comes so naturally?
I think in general, I'm a really obnoxiously difficult customer. I like when things are easy. I feel like the idea of like working hard for money and spending it and not getting something you were promised drives me insane.
Right.
And I think it's really, really easy for me to jump into the customer's shoes, which
Yeah.
is like, okay, if I was a customer, what would I want? And I
Yeah.
think really early on, I was like, you can just tell me you're sorry and I'd
Yeah.
be done. Instead, you're like, we apologize, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, it feels pre-recorded, it feels fake.
Right.
So something like that was like, if you take accountability, even though it's not your fault, you say like, I'm so sorry for X.
Totally.
That itself was like, okay, people are actually very happy with that, for me
Right.
taking accountability and not saying,
There's a human here.
right. And that just felt easy. And then I think outside of that, I think I have a higher dose of empathy, which as a kid made me a really emotional teenager. But
Right.
as an adult, I think it's like you just feel
Superpower.
things that maybe other people don't.
Yeah. I something I took from my first career at McMaster Carr. I always thought it was fascinating. They had all these like pillars, right? Big corporate company, and one was recover gracefully. And so the way they explained the importance of recovering gracefully is they took psychology studies and said, this is the baseline level of happiness when everything goes right in a CX flow. When something goes wrong, it dips, but if you recover gracefully, it actually lands in a place that's higher than it was if nothing went wrong in the first place. And I always thought that was like the most fascinating study, and that's something I've obviously brought into our life with Agile. But I think shows puts on display the power of CX. I remember being like, can we arbitrage that? Like,
Yeah. So in the like more like CX universe, it's called the service recovery paradox. Which
okay.
is
Oh, it has a
essentially-
name.
Yeah.
All right.
Which is essentially like, if you mess up and you fix it, people like you more than if you didn't mess up and you
Right.
didn't fix it. And
Yeah,
it is
totally.
an interesting idea of like, how can we arbitrage that? Yeah.
Yeah. So before we get into Jones Road, distinguish CX versus retention. I feel like that line's blurred a lot. It's both of them are in the title, and we'll talk about that. But how do you think of them differently, or do you think of them similarly?
I think that one is kind of more left brain and one is more right brained. I think like CX is a very straightforward, like, how do I make sure we're delivering an optimal customer experience across the journey? What's the expectation we're setting? How do we elevate that? Something that's come up recently, I was doing a call with somebody the other day, and they were talking about return rates and like, how do we massively decrease our return rate? And I say, well, let's think about it very linearly, right? Like if somebody buys a product and then says, I don't like it, I'm returning it.
Yeah.
Either you sold it incorrectly, or the product's garbage, which in your case is not possible because you have like 80% of people are keeping it.
Right.
Or there's somewhere across the journey where you oversold it or didn't provide enough support or attention, etc.
Right.
And I think that's CX. Like that's a good example of like what CX is like I'm looking across the journey and saying like how can we fix it? Part of that is support piece. Retention is can be viewed holistically, but a lot of it is more data and understanding customer life cycle and like how can I send the right message at the right time to keep engaging them and make sure they come back.
Yeah.
I think that as an industry we viewed retention as like life cycle marketing.
Right.
Right.
Like LTV analysis.
Which is like a small piece of like, yeah, if you send the right email, they'll probably buy again. But like product is a big part of retention, which like the email marketer can't fix.
Right.
So I think it's probably because I like pain that I have both in my title.
Yeah.
Because they're very different parts
yeah,
of
they're
your
very
brain.
different.
I think at some point in time we'll probably.
And the retention that's been newer with this role, would you say?
Retention has been, I came from a CX universe. Retention was always part of the thing I was excited about.
Right.
The reason why I pushed to get CX and retention is because I get bored really quickly, and I wanted to continue challenging myself.
All right.
And it was a lot.
That's
It was a lot of learning for me.
Yeah.
Learning about kind of like modeling and forecasting and spreadsheets were things that like Excel was never my friend. So
Yeah.
this
So I
is
thought,
all.
what happened to doing things you can do in your sleep?
Yeah, I think it's great until you get bored. And you're like, I just want a challenge.
Yeah.
And part of it was jumping into beauty.
Right.
I think like I could have easily gone from my success at Olipop to like
Right.
jump into another
Whatever's next. Yeah.
food beverage world, and I loved the idea of trying something different, but also something that I knew zero about.
Right.
And being able to learn like every product we sell, we have a ton of SKUs, and understanding like what about mascara can somebody absolutely hate,
Yeah.
and
for
what
sure.
about like and then educating on that,
Yeah.
which it's been challenging as hell, but exciting.
Awesome. All right. So let's stop to. Let's jump into Jones Road a little bit. So first off, how'd you get to Jones Road, and how would you describe Jones Road in your own words?
Yeah, I mean, Jones is really kind of like Bobby's journey. Like she started as a young makeup artist, and as she continued growing in her career, she was looking for something that worked for her, and something that was very high quality. And that's kind of when she started Jones a couple of years back. Jones Road is for me was interesting because it's truly her. It's like
Right.
the things that she's wearing, the things that she's creating. I got to Jones because I connected with Cody, who is the CMO, who's Bobby's son. We connected on Twitter as friends for a while, and Cody might remember this story, but he essentially reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're looking for a director of CX." And I said, "Cool, let me keep you in mind if I see anything." And then 2 weeks later, he says, "We're still looking." And I said, "I will let you know if somebody's interested." And then he's like, "You're an idiot. I'm trying to hire you." And then we kind of started talking,
I
and
love it.
and ended up being really excited about the opportunity. I think they've grown kind of like that, and that's always exciting and challenging.
Yeah. So let's talk about that role. I think one thing that's interesting and perhaps new, as I think of the life cycle, obviously there were retail elements that were material and legitimate about the other ventures that you were part of. This is owned retail. I feel like that opens up a whole like new arena in the CX game. So what has that been like? Where are the stores again? New York City, Hamptons.
New York City, Hamptons, and Jersey. And we have a counter in Liberty, London. Yeah, wow. I joined, and the first week I started, I went into the stores, and I was enamored by the idea of like having everything like top to bottom, fully vertically integrated. It's like
Right.
it's all Jones. And like you said, it comes with a lot of beauty, and it comes with challenges. Like the pros are, if you have negative feedback in store, if that happened at a counter in Bloomingdale's, probably won't get to you.
Right.
If it happens at a Jones Road store, we have their email. We're sending them a survey. We're getting that information, and it's been
first party
fun.
data.
Yeah, it's been fun and challenging to kind of like, a retail team is generally different than a CX team.
Right.
It's different personalities, but we've done like a lot of CX training, like and for
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
like trying to translate the learnings I have online to retail. Whereas I know I wouldn't last a half hour in
Yeah.
retail.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
there are parts, right, that you can transfer.
Yeah. All right. So, want to talk about the evolution of CX. So, you're obviously a massive influence and thought leader in the space. I want to talk about some of the different things you've been working on. But I think on a personal basis, I'm really curious about the rise of AI. And I think I've heard you have some strong opinions on, I don't know, like the diminishing marginal utility. And like, I think about it a lot. Like when a best practice feels like a best practice, it's no longer a best practice anymore. And I think you have a nice counterculture take on that rise. So I'd love to hear it.
I think my hot take. We'll do the hot take, and then we'll kind of
Cool.
get a little bit more. We'll click in a little bit. My hot take is it's coming for growth roles before it's coming for CX.
Okay.
Like the fact that humans are like buying bids and caps and all
Right.
that on Facebook ads when Facebook has millions of data points around the customer, et cetera. Like we're heading directionally towards like just give Facebook money and they'll buy the ads. That's my hot take. Is like CX, like the level of empathy you need to kind of like deeply understand, read between the lines
Right.
is probably, and again, AI is going to get there. There will be a
Right.
time where like AI can genuinely understand sentiment and understand tone and understand customer journey and fully get everything and answer in 3 seconds. It'll be better than any human could. I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
Now, what AI today, tomorrow, the next day is straightforward. Like the idea that where's my order? What's your return policy? Like basic generic questions, get that out of the way, have AI
Right.
tackle those, and have humans kind of step up and do like the surprise and delight, read
Right.
between the lines, do the crazy fun stuff. But I think we'll get there. But when a brand says like I'm 99% AI, and then a tweet tomorrow says like I'm obsessed with CX, I think that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. What tools do you find yourself using in CX? So I'm sure some of the people are like, you know, I understand the value, would love to be better at it. And I know there's not like a quick fix or silver bullet that everyone's looking for, right? It takes efficiency is what kills performant CX. But what do you find yourself relying on, leaning into as you think of that role in those customer journeys?
I think the most complex part of CX is getting and understanding and synthesizing feedback across the customer journey. So like we've often done like we got an NPS survey and this is what they said and everything's broken versus
Yeah.
like you also want to talk to people that didn't purchase your product,
Right.
right? You also want to talk to people that went retail. Like I think that's my number one is like how can we collect a lot of information and then like really get sentiment, not just like a lot of noise.
Yeah.
As a leader, I think I've always been like very, very tool light because I think tools are generally a crutch for you to use your brain less in terms of like you have 35 tools, dive in and talk to your customer like a person on a
Right.
Zoom call.
Right.
And in general, I've always worked at companies that weren't spending $100,000 a year on tools, so I
Right.
probably
Yeah,
taken
scrap a little
less of
bit
a
more.
dive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like if I had to choose like a few tools, I think if you're processing a lot of returns, you probably want to use a returns tool. You probably want a decent help desk and not use Gmail. You
Right.
probably want to like instead of saying NPS is BS or whatever, think of a way to survey that makes sense. You probably want a surveying tool. You probably want a reviews tool. I mean,
Right.
like I think keeping it pretty basic is probably important than like looking for the tool that's going to fix your problem. Like if
Awesome.
you have pissed off customers, like a tool is not the fix.
Yeah. All right. So I want to switch gears a little bit, and I think people look at CX retention sometimes in like a defensive posture. However, I think what's lost on a lot of people is using it with an offensive posture. Those are hard words to use, but upselling is sort of where I'm going with that, where it's not just like, oh, we're like trying to save face or like fix mistakes. There's also this entire part of the role in the world where it can be used as revenue generation and contribute to the bottom line. So what are your thoughts on upselling and how people do it effectively?
It's a good question. If you look at the space, right? You look at SaaS, right? SaaS is customer success. You look at the behemoths in the space, they're just straight selling.
Right.
They're hardly worried about like you get in a call with your CSM at a large SaaS company, the first thing they're like, oh, I see you use X, why don't you use Y as well? Upselling, cross-selling, etc. You look at D2C and it's entirely the other extreme. It's like, oh, your order's messed up, let me fix it.
Yeah.
We've gone like that instead of finding somewhere in the middle. I think ideally when you think about like as a customer, right? Like what makes you want to spend more money with a brand? I don't know. For starters, I get what I paid for.
Right.
Number two would be like I'm enjoying the experience so far.
Right.
So I think there's probably like a thoughtful for us at Jones. It's like we're going to upsell harder when somebody purchased a bunch of stuff and left a positive review versus the person that purchased once and didn't purchase in 6 months. It's probably
Right.
not the person to push a bunch of upselling back.
Yeah.
So I think when you're strategic about it, that's and how does CX play a role in that? It's like when somebody reaches out and says like, "Hey, I love this product. Thanks for helping me get shade match." You're like,
Right.
"Oh, cool. You might want to check out A, B, and C." But
Yeah.
being thoughtful and strategic is kind of where it goes from like this is annoying and sketchy to like, oh, that's exactly what I was looking for. So this like concierge shopping model, right? Like your Nordstrom guy or gal
Right.
that's like, oh, you like this, check out that. But
Yeah, like, oh, you have all these skin, like,
right,
here we have something
right,
that's coming available,
right.
make them feel
It's
like you've
human.
been heard.
It's human. It's thoughtful. It's understanding where you are in your journey. And I think that's if I had to look at SaaS versus D2C, I think they're both off.
Yeah,
I think we probably have to find somewhere in the middle.
got it. All right, so a lot of people look up to you for CX inspiration. I want to know, who do you look up for, or people you admire and respect in the same space?
I mean, there are a lot of fantastic players in CX. I think that as a whole, we've gone from this like old school, like the CX, like I don't know if you want to even call them like influencers, like the people that have written the books and the people that have written all this stuff. Like
Right,
they're 20, 30, 40 years old, these books, like the playbooks that you're reading about like customer service are decades old, written by people in their 60s, 70s,
yeah,
and
it's not
80s.
even relevant anymore.
Your customers are 15 and 25.
Right,
So I think there's a huge generational divide. I think there's so many great CX people. There's Mike from Figs is a great friend of mine. Jess from Feastables, Zoe from Chomps. I mean, there are so many fantastic players that have like taken what I've done and gone way past it. And I
yeah,
think it's also fun to see the in the last like I don't know 5 years, like CX and D2C has become a talking point. It
totally.
never was. You know how
Yeah,
hard it was for me to get a job in CX in 2020.
yeah,
I think we're seeing a shift.
awesome.
Yeah.
Want to talk about some of the things you've been working on. So you got Down to Chat with Cody, which is a great podcast. Tune in. Let's talk about all things CX. That's sort of new. How's that been going? It's already it's grown like crazy.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think I've always loved the idea of I'm very passionate about things. I'm also extremely introverted. Like I'd
Right,
always rather be in my house than leave the house. Always,
right,
period, full stop. And the idea of like as an introvert, it felt so exciting that people were interested in CX, and it was fun to be able to like tweet about it and not
right.
have to like get on a round table, hop on a podcast, like all those things. Exactly. That it takes a lot out of me.
Yeah,
And the newsletter,
appreciate it.
thank you. The newsletter was like this, like, hey, there's an idea where you can like sit in a corner or
Right,
in a coffee shop, write the things that you're passionate about.
right.
Anyone that reads the newsletter that knows me says like it feels like you're screaming at me.
Yeah,
But it's like it's me talking. I'm putting it into words. It's my passion, it's my life. And starting it, I asked a few people and they're like, you won't be able to keep it going long, you won't be able to grow it, you won't be able to this. Like there's always so much positivity when you're starting something
right,
new, which is a pleasure. And the idea was like I was seeing people do it on the growth side. And that's
right,
like we've seen a ton of growth newsletters, we've seen a ton of like media buying newsletters, we've seen a ton of I don't know, across the space, but CX was never spoken about.
right. And
And
it also wasn't a role.
yeah, and I tweeted like, "Hey, if I started writing about CX, would anyone be interested?" And then got a ton of great engagement, and then said, "Hey, would anyone be interested in sponsoring it?" Because for me, the idea of like not having to charge a customer, but motivation to keep going was exciting.
Right,
And my friends at Wonderment were like, "We're in, whatever it is, first 6, we're in." And it's been like 75 weeks since then, and it's grown like 10,000
man,
subscribers.
epic.
And yeah, it's just for me, it's like honestly the most exciting thing to be able to sit in a corner,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
scream at people.
I think the best analog is like, I remember growing up, someone like insults you, and then like 3 days later, you're like, oh, I just came up with the best comeback, and you're like, damn it, I'm too late.
Yeah, yeah. That's what it is. It's like I'll read tweets about like, hey, I just X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait till Thursday. Right. It's so much fun, and it's a way for me to kind of like share the things that I'm excited about, the work we're doing at Jones, the work I'm doing outside of Jones, be able to share that with people that are it started as like CX, and then it was like CX and retention learnings. And now it's like just, I mean, readers across, you know,
Yeah,
marketing in CPG broadly, but also across SaaS and across, B2B. And it's fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
and then CX Unlocked, I think it builds on top of that, distills the learnings into a essential resource. But That's new. How's
Yeah.
that been going? Just launched, right?
Yeah, so it's like I've been writing this newsletter for like, I don't know, a year and a bit. And Gorgeous reached out to me and they were like, you have so many nuggets split across so many weeks. Nobody, first of all, like when you started, you had 1,000 subscribers. Now you have 10,000.
Yeah,
So
they
most
all
people,
missed the
they all missed
core
it. You're not
lessons.
going to rewrite it because there are 1,000 people that are still getting the first ones. Like, is there any way we can work to kind of take
Consolidate it.
the most important things? And I'm like, there is zero chance I'm going through 75 newsletters. And like, no, we'll do it. So they spent tens of hours kind of going through every single newsletter from 0 to 70.
So you mean Chat GPT spent tens of
Somebody
hours?
somebody went through and they kind of like, we worked together on kind of reading the original draft and
Right.
made some updates and some comments, but it's a 46-page doc that is, tens of thousands, it could have been tens of thousands of words condensed. And it's honestly what I was looking for coming
Right.
into this. I was like, all these books are dinosaurs. What do I have to know about like CX today? And it's been the goal, and it was downloaded, tens of thousands of times, and people are loving it. And it's just, again, a way for me to give without having to leave my house.
Yeah, I feel that. So wrapping up here, I think as we reflect on your career, a lot of just like bold moves, leaps of faith, and the conclusion, the end story is great. But as you're going through it, it's
Conclusion is I should have been a VC because these were good choices.
they were good choices actually. But I think a lot of people are probably thinking about building businesses or scaling businesses. What advice would you give to your former self or to folks, potentially in a similar role that you were a couple years back?
I think every role I took, when I took it, people were like, this is kind of nuts. Like I started in a
So
luggage
that's how you figure out if it's the right move.
right? No, it was, and it's looking back, it was like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah.
It was less calculated and more serendipitous. It
Right.
was like me feeling like I was invigorated and excited about a place, and I'd be remiss to say that like luck doesn't play a huge role here. Like
100%.
jumping into Olipop when there were 15 employees, they were in like 50 stores in NorCal. It wasn't me knowing they're gonna pop off. I never tried the product before I joined.
Yeah.
It was me feeling like they were excited about the things I was excited about. And Jones was similar. It was like with Jones, I was further in my career. I knew Bobby Brown is an A player. I knew there's a celebrity
Right.
component here, but also like they were a lot smaller when I joined. But it was, I think going with my gut, I'm like, I do consistently take outrageous decisions in terms of like, you're already doing one thing well, why like,
Yeah.
if you're
Start
good
over.
at CX, why make retention part of your title if you know you can totally mess that up and not do well? So there's a part of it, I think I'm like an entrepreneur without the risk tolerance.
Right.
So I try to risk in a 9 to 5. But I think
love that. I like that.
if somebody's listening, I think there's going with your gut is a real thing.
Yeah.
I think working with good people is more important than like if somebody's offering you an extra $3,000 and you don't need the money, choose a place that's valuing you, that appreciates what you're bringing. Because I think what I realized is like we think of work as like, oh, it's 40 hours a week. Like newsflash, if you're in a startup, it's a lot more than 40 hours a week. It's a huge part of your life.
Yeah.
And if it sucks,
Yeah.
you'll probably
It's not gonna last.
you'll probably struggle quite a bit.
Yeah. All right. So a lot of cool different iterations of Eli. Last question. What's next for Eli? Are we gonna get a B2B? Are we gonna get a B2B phase of life ever?
We might.
The people want to know.
We might. I think the exciting thing for me is just continuing to challenge myself. I was saying this before I started Jones. I said like, maybe I mess around and go to SaaS. Maybe I mess around and go to hospitality. I would love to work at an airline at some point. Maybe hotels.
Dude.
I think the beauty of careers and life in general is that it's so long. Like, we consistently feel like, oh my God, time's passing. But
Right.
in today's day and age where people don't stay at companies for 30 years like our dads did, and people stay for like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years,
Right.
there's an ability to have multiple careers. And
Yeah.
and I've read a book about this recently that I can't remember. Range by David Epstein is also a good book about like actually understanding that you can have more than one career because you might be good at more than one thing. You can still focus on one
that's
thing at
fair.
a time. But we might.
Yeah, man, hospitality. Talk about a place that could use some CX love.
I love it. Like
Right,
I
another
love,
challenge.
love hotels, and I as a customer, I can walk into a hotel and be like, oh my gosh, this would have been so easy
Right.
and cost you nothing, and I would have felt so happy.
Yeah.
So I think the hard part is going in with humility. Like me, I did well at Olipop, but I
Right.
went into Jones and I knew nothing.
Right.
And it's really important to stay humble and be like, I need to bring in a lot of humility because I know nothing about this industry.
Awesome.
And I think that I can probably bring some stuff from there to here, but if I did do B2B, right? B2B is so wildly, I mean, customers are customers, but it's so wildly different because
Right.
you're not pitching to your customer, you're pitching somebody that's signing a $40,000 contract.
Right. The surprise and delights game's
It's
way different.
right? You're buying big bottles of brandy
Right.
instead,
Yeah. For
instead
real.
of sending blankets. But yeah.
All right. Well, stop 3.
Yeah.
It's the hot box. You
Okay.
ready?
I'm born ready. Yeah.
Let's do it. Cold plunge or hot tub?
Hot tub. I like pain in my work life, but
Not after hours.
Yeah, no cold plunge.
Beach house or ski house?
Beach. I've never skied.
All right, that's an
Ever.
easy one. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Sunrise or sunset?
It was sunset until I had a kid.
There you go.
And now I don't have a choice. It's always sunrise.
D2C or DTC?
Oh gosh, it's a DTC.
There we go. Neat or messy?
Neat.
Corgi or golden retriever?
Probably a golden retriever.
Tennis or golf?
Oh god, these are harder than I thought because I'm
You don't get
awful
to
at
read
both.
them. Yeah, you don't get to read them before either.
Probably tennis.
Okay. Pineapple pizza or candy corn?
Candy corn.
Yeah. Spooky season.
Yeah.
Live music or DJ?
I'm a live music kind of guy.
Sweet snacks or salty snacks?
Always sweet.
Always sweet.
Yeah.
Call or text?
I'm a text kind of guy.
Yeah.
I think us introverts like time to think about it.
Almost everyone has said text this season.
Yeah.
Reading or writing?
That's a good one. That is a very good one. I like writing. I like to be able to talk
So
to
just
myself.
keep consuming whatever is
Yeah.
next.
I do listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
But I've spent
Wait,
a lot of
that's
years.
a separate question. We're
Oh,
almost at the
I have-
podcast one.
I have spent a lot of years reading a lot. Like I had like 3 years that I was reading like 50 books a year.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of like I've been through all the self-help
Favorite
books. The Subtle Art of Not Giving
There you go.
yeah.
We'll bleep out the curse with a
Yeah.
truck horn. Where was it? Work remote or work on site?
I'm a remote guy. I get so distracted in office.
Yeah.
I can't keep up.
Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or TikTok?
Twitter.
Dancing or people watching?
People watching.
Cocktails or beers?
Cocktails.
Give up bread for life or give up cheese for life?
You have some easy ones. We have a lot of hard ones. I mean, I give up
As
cheese
we
before.
As we look at the mozzarella
I'm a
sticks
carb
there.
guy. There's no chance.
You giving up
giving
cheese?
Yeah, there's no
Wow,
chance
you're
of giving
sick.
up carbs. Yeah.
Board games or video games?
Board games.
No one said video games. That was such an easy one
It
for me.
might-
Video
yeah.
games all the way. $50 on red or black?
Oof. I'm going red.
Start early, leave late.
Start early.
I don't think anyone said leave late this season either. Fiction or nonfiction?
I'm gonna go nonfiction.
Okay. Playlists or podcasts?
Podcasts.
Speak to animals or speak 10 languages?
Jeez. 10 languages. I'm 3, so I'm almost a third in.
Yeah, but like,
I
I
like
don't know, the
languages.
animals one's pretty wild.
I don't really have a close relationship to animals.
All
I'm
right.
more of a speak 10
That could become like
languages kinda
Pokemon then, though.
guy. Yeah, I don't know.
Telepathy or teleportation?
Wow. Probably telepathy.
All right. Trucks or billboards?
I mean, stop.
Good
Trucks.
news or bad news first?
Always bad news first.
All right, well, the bad news is we have come to the
Oh,
end
God.
of our route.
He's throwing me off.
Eli, this was a lot of fun, man. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for
Appreciate
having
it.
me.
Wanted to give you a chance to tell the audience where can they learn more about you. They can book you on Mentor Pass. They got a ton of projects. Where
Yeah.
can they learn more about Jones Road?
Yeah, well, Jones Road is jonesroadbeauty.com. My newsletter is honestly like, don't book me on Mentor Pass. Just read the newsletter. I have no time in my day, but the newsletter is my labor of love, and I love doing it so much. So it's Eli Weiss with an extra s.com. So ELIWEISSS.com. It's the same Eli Weiss on Twitter. And yeah, I mean, if you can always just shoot me a DM if there's anything that I can help with.
Boom. That's a wrap.